everybody, Andrew here, and welcome back to my channel. So, if you don't know what I do by now, basically, if it's Canadian, I want to talk about it. You know, I never set out to be a nostalgic channel. Hell, one of my first videos was a Kim's Convenience video when that show was still on the air. But there's a hard truth that I have to face when I do videos, and that's this. Canadian television is like a red-headed stepchild. It's neglected and it doesn't get a lot of what it needs. So there are not a lot of shows for me to talk about. But after much searching, I think I found probably a great one to talk about today in the show Shelved. Shelved is a sitcom set at the fictional Jameson Library branch in Parkdale, Toronto. It follows the adventures and misadventures of the staff as well as some of the regulars. The show was created by Anthony Q. Farrell, who has worked on such TV shows as The Office and Little Mosque on the Prairie. Anthony wanted to be as realistic as possible, and in doing so, spent the day as a trainee at a local library. Now, upon the show's release, the series got high praise, with some even comparing it to Abbott Elementary. Is this show just as good? Let's take a look. The library is filled with some unique personalities that create for some interesting situations. These would include people such as Howard, who were just transferred here after a bad breakup. He's new and is the more level-headed member of the staff. Now, a fun fact about Howard, his story comes from a day transfer Anthony met during his training. There's also Wendy, the head of the library, a strong woman with a bubbly personality and an even stronger desire to make things better. She can also be naive at times, which leads to some unintended comedic consequences. Then there's Bryce. Bryce is a former convict turned assistant head branch. He's a right-leaning, no-nonsense kind of guy who frequently listens to in-show podcaster Patton Jefferson. And then there's Jacques, a left-leaning First Nations junior librarian, social media manager, and aspiring writer. The youngest member of the staff, she brings a millennial perspective to the stories and serves as a sort of counterpoint to Bryce. Making up the supporting cast is Sheila, who works on the settlement desk and has a will they won't they with Howard, Alvin Canada, a business consultant who uses a study room as an office, Patton Jefferson, who I mentioned, a right-wing podcaster who wants to defund public libraries, and lastly, unhoused Wendy, an eccentric regular of the library who's recovering from alcohol addiction and is played by the legendary Robin Duke. What makes this cast so great is that they're a mishmash of different personalities who can get into fights but can also work together. A great example of this would be in the first episode when Jacques and Bryce clash over their book picks for the week, but in the same episode team up to defend Wendy from Howard. The thing I like about them having different backgrounds, it feels like it's more all-encompassing and is really reflective of Toronto. Now, you know who runs the Jameson Library, but what about some of the stories they tell? Now yes, obviously Shelved is a comedy, so there's gonna be some comedic storyline. Like when Wendy gives Bryce, Jacques, and Howard 3 questionable books to try and save them from decirculation, or when Bryce goes above and beyond and goes to somebody's house in order to get a book back from when he first started. The character moments are also great as they help to create empathy for these people. One person they helped me appreciate more was Wendy. I'm not big on people with bubbly personalities, but seeing her struggle and be frustrated trying to make things work just made me appreciate more what she does. And the show does also do its own spin on issues in the library and literature world, such as Bryce's reaction to a drag story time, or when Jacques' favorite author isn't who she thinks she is. These are controversial topics, and I know they can be divisive, but I think the show does a good job by grounding them and acknowledging the issue on an individual basis, rather than try and preach to the masses. I also need to praise the character work they do in between scenes because it helps to show why libraries are important and we get to see the effect that this place has on people. And one more point that I really need to drive across is foreshadowing. This show does a fantastic job of it. First off, in the first episode, we see Jacques pick a book by an author who later appears in the show. There's also the running gag about renovations, with every episode adding a new date for when the library finally gets its overdue renovations. And one of the most important foreshadows, in episode 2, Bryce mentions that Patton Jefferson, after his visit to the library, is discussing running for mayor, and he makes good on his promise in the final episode. When he wins, Wendy confronts him on behalf of everyone who uses libraries and throws a book at him, becoming a local hero. But this comes at a cost, as everything she wanted for her library, renovations, funding, all the things that she fought so hard for, she's finally gonna have to get, but she is gonna be promoted to a position that would see her leave the library. Unfortunately, this is where I have to end the story because for some reason they decide to cancel this show. Okay, so why did this show deserve better? Well, for starters, Shelved was a workplace comedy that is sorely missing from Canadian television. Its characters were grounded, its comedy was grounded, everything felt so realistic, and I miss seeing that in my comedies. And as for the comparisons to Abbott Elementary, I get it. Watching this show, every time it ended, there was a feeling like they were building to something even better, and I couldn't wait to see where it went. But for them to arbitrarily cut it off at one season, it just makes no sense to me. This was a good thing, and for them to just say, we're done? This show deserved way better than what it got. And I have been praying that we'll find a show that could be a successor to shows like Kim's Convenience or Schitt's Creek. One that lets the whole world know that, hey, we're Canada. These are the kind of shows we can make. Maybe you should tune in. Honestly, I'm just really hoping that maybe CTV will reconsider and give the show a second chance. Now, if you are interested, Shelved is available on the premium CTV app and on Crave. And I would strongly encourage you to maybe let your voice known and let CTV know that, hey, you would like to see more. Anyways, that's gonna do it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm just really happy to talk about a new Canadian TV show again, and I'm hoping to talk about more in the future. And if you want to help the channel, leave a comment, thumbs up, and if you really like what I do, maybe subscribe. Anyways, that's it for me. I'm Andrew, and I'll see you later.